What's your favorite scary movie?
Be a little professional, guys. What are you laughing at? If you ever heard the show before, you know that's how we start every episode.
I hear it every day from my living room. Go on.
Welcome in to the worst episode ever of the Bro 4 Squad podcast, where we're just a bunch of bros, and tonight with our wives, drinking beer, talking movies. I'm your host, the Mayor, Jeff Hornacek. This is our spoilers review of Scream 2022. I'm joined by our legal counsel, Ronnie Cycli, and two lucky fans who happen to be married to us, Robin Sparkles and we'll just call her Shakira, joining us. Here to review Scream using the 5 Bro 4 Squad criteria: the acting, the cast, the story, our favorite scene, and the impact and rewatchability of the film. Let's dive right in. Again, spoilers coming up. If you've not seen Scream 2022, pause this, go out to the theater for 2 hours, leave us on pause in your pocket, watch the movie, and then come back. We begin with the acting and cast. Ronnie, get us started off on a good foot. Who stood out positive or negative in the movie for you?
Well, first thing I would say is it's always good to see the original cast, right? It's always great to see Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, and David Arquette. But we got a new cast here as the main role, and Jenna Ortega, who we know from season 2 of You. I thought she was fantastic. She takes over in the opening scene, which is, as we know with Scream, is kind of the main thing. That's always in their big sell, so that's a big responsibility for her, and I thought she sold it well. Overall, though, I also thought that the main character, Melissa Barrera, who played Sam, was probably the weak link in the movie. I thought it just felt like she was overselling every scene she was in, and she was probably in the most of it, so thankfully the film, to me, covered her acting issues, but overall I thought, it was great to see everyone else.
Robin Sparkles, how about you? Good or bad in the movie?
Actors and actresses?
Yes, cast, performances.
Yeah, so I agree. I think Melissa Barrera, her one-on-one scenes, especially with Neve and Courtney, were disappointing. It kind of stood out really in those moments. The rest of the scenes, she was great, but that was the ones were really not a big fan. Overall, I thought some of the new characters that were introduced were great. There are some characters I've seen in some other shows that I hadn't seen them in this kind of scenes before. Dylan Minnette, Mikey Madison, you recognize this character, so it was interesting to see them in a horror for the first time. Overall, I thought the acting was great. There was a lot of comedic moments, there was a lot of serious moments, but yeah, the standalone, a little bit of a disappointment. Sam Carpenter in her solo scenes.
I will say, as a female in the Scream franchise, I think Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox get it, because they're like, you can't take your role too seriously, otherwise people are like, do you know what the fuck movie you're in? Because it's really not that serious. And Neve Campbell, as a veteran of the franchise, I think was a very steady anchor in this. Shakira, how about you? Who was good or bad as far as the performances?
Shakira Hayek, as your lawyer, I have to say her full name is Shakira Hayek.
The name is still in beta testing. We'll let the fans vote on if they like that or not. But I will say Jack Quaid threw me for a loop. He tricked me the entire movie. I was on his side, and he, as a big fan of Dawson's Creek, I was looking at Joshua Jackson the entire time. But granted, it was not him, and he was great, I thought. But I do agree, Melissa Barrera, not the best. Courtney Cox, I'm a big Friends fan. Monica crushed it. That's my take.
I will mention that really quickly, that Dylan Minnette has been in horror before. Like, we've seen in 13 Reasons Why.
He's in Prisoners.
And then he was also in Open House, which is not very talked about, but that's a Netflix original. But there were parts, you and I watched it, I think there were parts we enjoyed. Like, the idea of Open House.
What's the line in Role Models? I don't like Diet Coke, but I think I like the idea of Diet Coke.
That's Open House to a T right there. So he wasn't the problem in Open House, but I will say I'm a decent fan of his. I don't hate when he's on screen.
Can I just say, too, David Arquette, like, no one will probably ever say this unless there's a big Eight-Legged Freaks fan community out there, the mouth breathers trying to kill us. I actually think he is Dewey Riley. Like, is the guy, does he have, like, Academy Award-winning acting chops? No, but he's really good at, like, the aw-shucksy hometown cop who's, like, kind of had his whole life be a bit of a
dependency issue.
Yeah.
Well, look, I'm going to say this.
I'm sorry, I love morning talk shows.
He outshot his coverage 20 years ago with Courtney Cox. He's aged better than Courtney Cox.
Ew.
I'll throw it out there.
Yeah, Courtney's work.
I'm just going to say it.
She needed work, but
Yeah, not a good job.
I don't know.
Not opposed to work.
I'm just saying Dewey could get it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
right here.
Dewey is way out of your league, Ronnie.
I know.
All right, the second part of our review is the story and the plot. So, Robin, what did you think? Again, spoilers heavy. We already kind of mentioned it in cast. But Scream, I think the trope in all the Scream movies is it beats you to the punch with everything you're predicting by acknowledging it in the film. And, Robin, I think we can say this has sort of a new take on the horror genre since the last installment we've had and takes meta to kind of a whole new level.
Yeah, if you've seen Scream 1, you've seen this. But they do really lean heavily on the meta side of things. Not too much so. Like, they make fun of it, and they definitely call it out. They're very transparent about that. They even define what a requel is, which, you know, was not something I was familiar with. So it's funny. I don't think it's overdone. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed it. They make a lot of nods back to Scream 1. I think they reintroduce it for fans that haven't seen or that have seen Scream before. They define it enough for fans that haven't seen it before. Obviously, again, with their definition of requel, they bring back the originals. I don't know. Overall, thoroughly entertaining. A lot more gore than some of the original ones. I think they took the gore to a new level, zooming in on some
throat slashes,
ankle breaks,
the breaking of bones. That was new. I don't really feel like they've ever done that before in any of the Screams. So, yeah, no, I was entertained all the way through.
And I think Ghostface probably gets he stumbles the least of. In any
there was
of
a couple
films.
stumbles, but
but he felt more coordinated here.
He didn't have as many bruises this time around.
Do love the throwback to the original house too.
Yeah. So
that was wonderful.
I'll say this before I toss it to Shakira. I would highly recommend. You don't have to see because I haven't seen all of the Scream installments prior to watching this, but I do think you won't be completely lost or not enjoy it if you haven't seen the first one. But it's kind of
recommended.
It's borderline required viewing, I would say, based on
especially with the Billy Loomis background.
Yeah. All right, Shakira, what do you think of the story?
I've only seen one last night, and it helped me. I mean, Robin and Ronnie are notorious for telling me movies aren't gory, and they've done it with the movie Us, and they did it with Scream 1 through 5 as well. And I'll tell you, this one was gory. They lied to me again. But
they hadn't seen this. So
well, you know what? You're
it's
right.
Not
they
gory.
haven't seen this one, but 1 through 4 they've seen.
Judas.
And they knew what I was walking into. They pressured me into this.
But
one.
you still believe us, and I love it.
I believe them every time. I'm a wimp, but I'm a follower, I guess.
$74 vodka will do that.
Yes, $74. Lick the floor for that one. But no, I like the storyline. I agree with Robin where she says it. I really liked that they brought it back to the original house. I like that they brought back some original cast. It was entertaining for sure. I don't know. Overall, not a scary movie fan, but it gets 5 stars from me.
Ronnie, how about you? Again, with Scream, it's the fun is always the meta whodunit. Yeah. Obviously, throughout the movie, you probably predict every single person at one point.
But the movie doesn't try to be like Saw. It doesn't try to I mean, obviously it has a twist ending, but it doesn't. That's what I respect about it. Like, it's just part of the journey with it. You know, I've obviously on the pod, I've always been the horror guy, and I've talked about how much I love the original Scream. I think what I loved again about this one is it takes everything as a fan that we've talked about and puts it in a movie, right? Like, we literally had a conversation an hour before the movie how Ghostface Killer isn't a character, right? Like, we have Michael Myers, we have Jason Voorhees, we have Nightmare on Elm Street, and they're like iconic killers. Freddie Krueger.
Watch Live Aid, he killed it.
And so, but the thing is, like, Scream doesn't have an iconic killer; it has an iconic face. And then, what does the movie do today? the movie literally references that exactly. They literally say, hey, we don't have an actual killer who has been around. So I love that they reference it. And I love that... Killers. And one of my favorite things is, what do they talk about? As someone who's a massive horror movie fan, they talked about Babadook. They talked about Get Out. They talked about...
Elevated horror.
Horror with a purpose. And they kind of, talked about like...
on it.
I don't think they hated on it. They respected it. Her favorite movie was Babadook. Most people don't like Babadook, but
I think she respected it. I think the movie was meant to kind of make fun of it.
Exactly. 100%. The reason why they made this movie is because they say, we don't like this type of movies. We want to go back to what the original fan love was of this thrasher thriller type where it's a murder mystery.
See, I feel like it's they're two things. We're looking at two different types of horror movies. You want to have a slasher film where you don't have to think, and you want to watch a horror film that Jordan Peele, like, you have to go out of the theater and read Reddit for 2 hours. So I mean, again, it's something I personally love, and I felt very connected to that scene when they talk about that. So
I think there's an interesting conversation at the end too, where Jack Quaid's character Richie says, how can fandom be toxic? It's all bred out of love. And you're
to a Star Wars
fan.
Yeah,
get on the fucking message boards and just Google Star Wars message board and watch how many people
no one hates
literally say, I have your IP address, I'm going to fucking kill you.
The internet has never been toxic.
You think a blue lightsaber's the best? Yeah. I'll be at your house in 10 minutes with a chainsaw. But it does sort of acknowledge that there are two parts to the horror sandbox. There's the elevated horror, which I think has really become more prevalent the past probably decade to a decade. But Scream it's at its strength so self-aware, saying like, look, that's punching above our weight, but we still have a place in this genre, even if it is being very self-referential and not necessarily commenting on some of the things that elevated horror is. I'd probably have to rewatch it to really see what it's saying about elevated horror, but it at least acknowledges that people love it now.
But that's what Scream is always.
Without spoiling other movies, I'll say the recent Matrix did meta wrong.
Right.
And this did meta right.
Right. This is a perfect example.
You can reference originals, you can reference, your previous story arcs without being so meta that you literally have scenes of your own movie in there.
But this
one did that too.
Yeah. But Scream has always been that. Scream has played that meta line better than any movie franchise.
It's done meta better.
Oh!
Copyright.
That actually made
trademark. Patent pending. Patent pending. All right.
Rachel's paging.
Moving on. Can I answer that? She blocked me.
No, she's paging.
I'm right here.
Oh, hey, what's up? Moving on to our best scene. Shakira, we'll go to you first. What's your favorite scene from the movie?
All right, I'm all for a girl power scene. I loved it when they were in the kitchen and.
Came into the kitchen. Am I right?
That seems counterintuitive, but
all right.
Knowing their place.
Thank you, Ronnie. I know my place.
Shakira Hayek, everybody.
You're referring to the scene at the end with Nev Campbell and Courtney Cox.
Nev Campbell and Courtney Cox are in the kitchen, and Gail Weathers just got stabbed, and he's starting to attack Sydney, and you can tell, they have this little moment. They look each other in the eye, and none of them are about to die. You see it in their eyes. They're like, I got you, girl. And I just love that. I love a scene like that. I loved it in Avengers. In Endgame, I'll love any girl power scene. I'm a sucker for it.
And I think it's iconic because of the moment they shared in the first movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in the kitchen. Yeah, women in the kitchen.
What an odd
We
place.
get it. Women
They're
belong
making
in the
fajitas.
kitchen.
All right, Ronnie.
And conveniently, Robin made fajitas
That's
last
true.
night.
Women empowerment. I will enjoy it.
It's a beautiful thing. 2022. Cycly, what was your favorite scene?
So I'm gonna just again kind of reference it earlier was the scene midway through the movie where Sam is, she finally got Dewey to help her out on her investigation. Her sister's been attacked. And so she gathers Tara's friends into a room at Randy's old house, which I like that callback, at Randy's nephew and niece's house. And they discuss the plot of the movie. Like, literally, that's the meta-ness of Scream. And they're just shoving it in your face, but again, in a very great way. where they're talking about, they explain the requel, with Robin Sparkles just mentioned earlier, about how it's not a sequel. It's not a whole brand new introduction into the series. Because I think we talk about it all the time with the Disney movies, right? Like when they're redoing Aladdin and Lion King, we walk out of there mad because what? It's not identical to the cartoon, or they vary too much away from the movie. So we're like, why did they do that differently? So how do you make us happy? So that scene to me was a perfect, again, being a fan and having those conversations was as realistic as it gets to any movie franchise. And no movie does it better than Scream. So I felt that as a fan of the horror genre, where they discuss it and they explain who is the suspect, who is the next victim. It was perfect. And they were right. And that's the thing, is Scream is leading you to the answer, and you're not supposed to be shocked by it.
And I love how they broke down how you have to make the characters even tangentially related to legacy characters, otherwise fans will freak out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it kind of explains like why I don't know if it was Stu who had his nieces and nephews, like even though he's really not necessarily at all to the plot, he's like has a connection to the characters in the franchise.
I mean, imagine seeing this movie without Sydney, without Gale, without Dewey.
Yeah.
I mean, again, the movie could be fine. I told you, we have a Teddy try to make an appearance on the podcast.
What's up?
Someone's hungry.
Yeah. So, but anyway, that's my favorite scene.
My favorite scene was like taking meta to, I think, a whole new level, and that was the Courtney Cox, David Arquette / Gale Weathers, Dewey Riley sort of on-screen reconciliation. Now, I don't get too much into the TMZ details. I don't know exactly how their marriage ended.
You literally work for TMZ.
Okay, that was 2 years ago, and honestly,
was an internship.
Feels like they paid me not very well. And also, like, bagels every other week. Do it every Friday. Come on, you have the money. But Courtney Cox and David Arquette, first off, agreeing to be in a scene together was interesting to me. Like, the fact that they've clearly reconciled. I mean, they were met on the set of these movies, got divorced, obviously, several years later. The fact that they're able to professionally work together is kind of cool. But then their characters, you made the joke in theater, like, I feel like they didn't even have a script for the scene. It's just like them actually talking out, like, hey, I would like to still be like amicable and be able to be in the same room as each other. And that was just really interesting to me. And like, even if you don't know the backstory, I think you can kind of tell, like, okay, there's something going on.
It felt real.
Yeah, beyond the best acting David Arquette's ever done. I'll say that. And the Ready to Rumble fans were like, I don't know, man, he was pretty good in that movie. Robin Sparkles, what was your favorite scene?
That's tough. I had several. The opening scene was fantastic with just Tara Carpenter. The hospital scene with her and the like squelching of her hand on the wheelchair.
The sound of that.
Fantastic. All of that was amazing. The nod to the garage scene with the basement.
The garage had made an appearance.
I mean, they were all fantastic, but I think I have to go to a really simple scene where Gale and Sydney are outside the original house, and Amber comes running outside, and she's like, "Oh my God, help me!" And they go, "Wait, is this real or fake?" And they call it out as fake, and
she doesn't even try to trick
She
him.
didn't even try. She's like, you know what? Screw this.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really funny, but a nice nod back to the first screen.
She knows she's messing with the pros there.
Yeah.
She's like, this.
She's
is
like,
not
you know what? It's
worth
not
it.
going to work. They know this story arc, so okay, all right, they caught me. I thought that was funny.
And we didn't know it was the house at that moment. Like, we didn't know that was the house.
It definitely did not click to me.
I think when they like tracked, I think it was Sam's phone, they were both like, oh shit.
Yeah, but we didn't. Yeah, like exactly. They realized it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They realized it.
And
The reaction gives something away, but yeah, you don't know exactly.
And really quickly, just to make a nod on what Robin Sparkles just said, the opening scene, and Scream always has been known for their opening scenes. And I thought none of us had it as our favorite scene, but it nailed it. It knocked it out of the park. Just fantastic. It set the tone.
As Matt Geiger says, doesn't have to be the best scene, but it has to set the tone.
Absolutely set the tone with the ankle break.
Oh, no.
I mean, my God.
I haven't seen an ankle break like that since Stefan Marbury crossed up Yao Ming.
Yeah, so props to the opening scene. Loved it.
All right, my personal favorite category, the impact of this film, or anything interesting that happened with your viewing experience. You haven't said your best scene?
I did.
Yeah.
Oh, you did. My bad.
Jeez. You can tell we have some first-timers on the podcast
Am I a
here.
newbie?
Like, you have two scenes you want to talk about?
Yeah.
Okay.
All the scenes.
I think the thing I want to point out for impact was we went to see this at a Regal Cinemas, and Robin Sparkles and Ronnie Cycli were kind enough to treat us to 4 vodka sodas as we watched the movie, which totaled before tip, I believe, $80. So Regal Cinemas, if you're listening,
Worth it.
Was
quick
it?
question. What
For-
the fuck?
We could have bought 2 handles of
Yeah,
tea
we should have
for
just
that.
snuck some vodka.
I think we got actually like an eighth of ownership in Regal Cinemas for our purchase there. But I'll say this briefly. I think Scream, I don't want to say the franchise is back because I think the strength of Scream is we need one like every 5 years. Like this can't be every other year because what it has to say about horror, it's not like as the genre evolves, it gets more and more relevant. So please don't make another one of these in 2 years. Of course they're going to if it does well.
I heard you.
At the box office, they're like, what, you don't want it?
Oh, you'll get it.
Hold my beer.
You'll love it.
But it's good to see this franchise back because I think it's a fun sort of self-referential poke at horror for someone who likes horror films and likes whodunit movies. Let's go reverse order. Ronnie, impact of the movie.
Yeah, I mean the impact again. If you go back to the original Scream, the slasher genre was dead in the '90s, absolutely dead, and Wes Craven brought it back with Scream. I think we're kind of seeing that again because it was referenced. We talked about the Babadooks, we talked about the Get Outs, and the elevated horror. And I think that was kind of the purpose almost. It felt like saying, hey, yeah, that place of horror has a point, but don't forget the original type of horror movie. They reference Psycho and everything in this. So
Child's Play.
Yeah. So I hope, again, as just a big fan of horror, whether it's high horror or low, whatever you want to call it, I hope that brings back the slasher films. I really think there's a place for it in the genre. I think there's a way to do it smartly. It doesn't have to be cheap. It doesn't have to be stupid. I think Strangers, 15 years ago showed that. So I hope the impact is it has nothing to do with the Scream genre, the Scream franchise. It has to do with the impact on horror movies itself. So that's what I hope we'll see what
There was
this
just a new
do.
Halloween too, a very similar premise, and that was also very popular. So I don't think it's the only one going for this
You're right.
They touched on
retro
that
or
in
not.
They did touch on that, but the thing is, these are remakes. I mean, again, what the 80s did with the slasher genre came out, like, you came out with the Friday the 13th, you came out with the Nightmare on Elm Street. They were brand new.
Mm-hmm.
Can we get something fresh in the horror genre? We got Saw in the 2000s. That was awesome, right? Like, you and I have talked about it 1,000 times. Is there going to be something new in the horror genre that's going to be the next decade of awesome murder? We'll see. I hope so.
Awesome murderer.
Yeah.
Shakira, impact.
Hey, I'll take the complete opposite stance of Ronnie. Not in like I disagree with you. I completely agree with you, but I'm not a horror fan. I don't do horror movies. We've touched on that before in this episode. I don't like scary movies, but I don't know. This kind of made me be like, maybe I can handle this. It wasn't scary so scary I can't handle it. Granted, I made them all go to a matinee on Saturday after 3 drinks, but I don't know. I liked it. I covered my eyes a little bit, but to me it was a good level of scary, good level of comedy, good level of just kind of making fun of the scary movie, and I'm into it. I'd watch another Scream.
The way it teases jump scares that don't happen is
is
really
the
hilarious.
music.
Yeah.
The music was great.
Because it wants to watch you tense up
You
and then do
still
nothing.
have nail marks from my nails on your shoulder from
More
the entire time.
More so from Ronnie on the other side.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But that was on your dick.
Okay.
Robin
Okay.
Robin
Chill.
Sparkles. My mom listens to this. Robin Sparkles, impact of the movie.
I'm gonna take that, and yes, the nod to like they had multiple scenes where like a doorway opens and you're expecting Ghostface to be behind the door, and then they close the door and he's not there. Like, they make fun of the audience in that sense. That is hilarious. I love that. There was multiple scenes where I was giggling, like the meta side of it, where like it just, you expect certain things to happen. Overall impact, it was great. I laughed. I had cringy scenes. The gore was a new level of gore. The adding a bone break, even just the stabbing. There's a through the skin, through the neck. Like there's.
I don't know how you even do that practically.
Oh man,
Dylan
and
Minette's
they just
like,
keep the camera on it
Yeah.
too. It's not like a not. I feel like with the original Screams, like
I went to the bathroom. I
there
came
was,
back.
like,
It was still
bloody-
going.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god.
He took a shit too.
They
It was
just
like
keep
30
it
minutes.
going. So impact, great. It took the originals to a new level. I thought it was like, yes, it was a similar theme, but it elevated it. And I know the whole point was not to be an elevated horror, but it still was an elevated version of itself with keeping true to the genre. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. Ronnie likes to make fun of me for how much I dislike movies. I enjoyed this through and through.
I have a question. Was it realistic?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was.
All right.
No, because the funny thing about with Scream is with Ghostface, they don't make him this invincible.
That is true.
That's true.
They don't.
He
make
can't
him,
like jump 20 feet in
He's
the
not
air.
Michael Myers.
or-
They don't make him
yeah.
like Michael Myers, where he gets shot and stabbed and he's invincible and he never dies.
Yeah.
They make Ghostface where he gets hit with a door and he gets knocked down and he's like, oh, hurting.
You'll hear him go, ow!
Motherfucker!
I also have a question, Robin Sparkles. Where do you plan to put the movie poster they took home from the
Big
movie
deal,
theater?
guys.
Oh, thank God.
In
It
your
was
house?
Everyone listening, we
given-
got a movie
Oh,
poster.
You know, it was a hot commodity.
It
I
was.
genuinely did not think there'd be any left.
There was
to go
100
out for
copies.
matinee.
Oh.
Right next to the Jesus
It's
Christ
gonna go over
portrait
our
on your
bed.
wall. Yeah.
It does say
Yeah.
limited edition.
Maybe on top of your bed so you can look at it.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
you know what? I'm going to get him into pillowcases.
Oh, there you go.
Screen print.
We're not going to crease the edges. That'll pay for your kid's college. It's a fucking collector's item. All right, last category is re-watchability. So typically here we also like to say, would you recommend the film to someone? But if you've listened all the way through this, we've spoiled the whole thing. So maybe you're just maybe you're one of those lunatics that like still wants to go see it. I'll say this. I think typically with a whodunit, I would say, well, once you know who the killer is, there's maybe not that much to gain from a second viewing. But Robin kind of mentioned this before we started. Now that you know where the breadcrumbs lead, it is kind of fun to go back and rewatch and see some of the hints that the movie was giving to you. And I actually do want to go back and watch for the first time Scream 2, 3, and 4 and see there's probably a lot of Easter eggs and connections that I missed from there. Ronnie, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I would rewatch this. I mean, I get what you're saying about knowing the whodunit and everything, but to me, it's kind of like watching the first Saw again, like watching the original Scream. Like, the journey is part of the adventure, right? Like, I enjoy watching the film. I would definitely watch this movie again. I would definitely recommend this movie. You know, I called my sister immediately after, and it's like, hey, you have to see this movie. It was fantastic. I don't mind, knowing the ending. But we watched the original Scream last night, and it felt the same way. And I think I think this is probably the second best Scream, in my opinion. It's like you said, like you and I walked out of theaters, like just like that. We loved it, and I don't think that's going to go away with any rewatchability. It's not going to take away because we know the ending. So I would absolutely say 100% rewatchable. Add it to the queue. Watch it every Halloween. Add it with the Screams.
Big compliment is when Cycle and I went to take our pee break, we sprinted to the bathroom and pushed over an elderly woman and a 4-year-old.
She had it coming though.
The fucking look on her face.
Why are you walking with a walker?
Right, and that
Taking
4-year-old,
space?
where are your parents?
Jesus.
My God. Shakira, rewatchability of the movie.
I'll say this: I watched Scream 1 for the first time last night, and before every major scene, you turned to me and told me what was about to happen. And I still sat there being like, oh, I can't wait to watch this happen. I feel the same way about this. Now that I've watched it myself, I can know what's about to happen but still be excited by it. I will absolutely recommend it to people. I think it's rewatchable. I actually am sitting here being like, Robin and I just turned to each other and we're like, I don't think we actually spoiled who done it.
No, we haven't.
In this episode.
Nice.
Which is really kudos to us.
For spoiling a lot of it,
Robin,
we
it
haven't.
wasn't me. But I don't know. I loved it. I would rewatch it. I would tell other people to watch it, and that's coming from a freaking whim.
I think that's the biggest compliment you can give this movie right there.
Is people that aren't diehard horror
Yeah.
fans.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
I don't do horror.
I mean, you and I cannot be more extreme opposites on horror. Like I love the
we have
genre
a
as
lot of
much
things
as,
in common,
but not the horror genre.
the horror genre. I'm out.
Yeah.
Robin, rewatchability.
100%. Yeah. I want to rewatch it right now to go back and like see those little I'm sure there's little subtle
Cancel
things
dinner
that are
reservations.
Shit.
She said it.
I found it funny, and that's part of the Scream genre is there are funny moments. I want to go back and rewatch it because I think for that I like the nod back to the original. I always like that with the Scream, like there's subtle hints early on, but they do such a good job of throwing you off throughout. Ooh, could this be a murder? Is this murder? Is this a murder? I think I want to go back and rewatch and be like, oh, well, this eliminates them and that eliminates them, and just see who's in what scene and who's not. I want to rewatch it. I think there's a lot of people, whether you've seen the originals or not, I think you can watch this either way. I think if you've seen it before, you'll enjoy it for what it attributes back to the originals, and if you haven't seen it, they give you enough background, you'll know what's happening. You're not going to be lost either way.
But I would say watch the first one.
Absolutely.
No, 100%. That's the only one I watched.
And it
gives it the extra nod.
It's the only one you
I don't know.
need.
I don't know that you need to watch the first one to get
Well, you get Billy Loomis.
but
You
it
need that
helps.
background.
Yeah, and it gives you just the like. It makes you want to understand it. It makes you want to watch it more.
Can you mention Skeet Ulrich coming back? Sorry.
Oh my god! And then watch the spiritual prequel In the Heights, which shows you what Sam's character was doing after she left her family. Right, and then when she didn't win that fucking lottery, she came back.
Say, I was really wrong on I thought there was going to be also a connection, and this is a spoiler, between Richie and Randy. They look so much alike. I thought that was going to be a relationship there.
Yeah.
And I was wrong.
But again, Scream to me is not about the who. It is about who done it, but it's about the overall horror franchise, the journey to get there. And I think this movie delivered.
And the fun part with a rewatch is the movie is kind of having a conversation with the viewer as it's going on. Like there's a discourse taking place where they're like, "Look at this fucking guy. Yeah. He's probably the one who did it."
Oh my god! When she wants to have sex with her boyfriend, he's like, "But you might be the killer." Like that was fucking.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that was good. Nothing does better than jump scare to funny. Like there's nothing better than Scream.
Yeah, it's true. All right, for our legal counsel, Ronnie Cycli, for Robin Sparkles, for Shakira,
Hayek.
I'm the mayor, Jeff Hornacek. We are the Bro Force Squad
Please vote for
podcast.
me.
Follow us on Twitter at Bro Force Squad. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, anywhere you find your podcast. If you type in Bro Force Squad as 3 separate words, and check out our website, broforcesquad.com. Till next time, we're going to go around and just talk about what's our favorite scary movie. Mine is probably the wedding video from my first marriage.
Yeah, because Rachel was looking great, but you weren't. Well, also, don't forget.
We're going to talk about our wedding video.
Don't forget,
in
Teddy
like
was on
3
the pod.
years.
Teddy was on the pod today.